got married in 1979. In 1981, we moved to Kiryat Arba. We were looking for some place where we thought we could contribute something. 1981 was then what they called the Camp David Accords that Begin had signed with Sadat, and we knew that after the Sinai they were talking about Gaza, Judea, Samaria. So in the end we found a very inexpensive apartment in Kiryat Arba. We moved there, lived there for 17 years. I started working with the Jewish community about 23 plus years ago. I worked with the community for 22 years, most of the time as a spokesperson, working with film, with speaking to journalists, internet, writing, whatever. I concluded that chapter in my life about a year and a half ago, where today I'm still doing some of the same things I did then, just in a little different framework. So that you know who's been blabbing at you all this time. What I leave this time for is, as I said, you people have been in Hebron, heard different things here and elsewhere. People hear different things, they see different things, they read different things, and it's very important for me to try to relate to some of the things that you're interested in hearing about rather than just what I'm interested in talking about. So I always preface questions and answers just by saying that having worked with the news media for about 2 decades, there's very little I haven't heard, so you can ask whatever you want. And I'll try as best to answer you. I have a feeling that probably, even though I'm not officially today an official spokesman for the community, I have a feeling that most of what I say is fairly representative. So with that, don't be bashful. Wait, somebody had asked me a question earlier. You had asked me about TIFF, about the cars. The cars, TIPH stands for Temporary International Presence in Hebron. It's an international observer force. It's not a UN force. It's supposed to be an impartial international observer force made up of 6 countries. The head of mission is always Norwegian. They have people from Denmark, from Sweden, Switzerland, Italy, and Turkey. And they've been here basically since the Hebron Accords were signed, and they are supposed to be neutral. And I underline supposed to be. You can understand what I really think about them, because they're not. But they wander around here and take pictures and whatever, and then they write. They have, I don't remember. I think it's a quarterly report that they put out. But we're not allowed to see it, secret. So we don't have any way to react to it. But they.
Who does see it?
Excuse me?
Who does see it?
And it's given to the. And I don't know the roles of the United States and the Russians are supposed to be like the, the big daddy or whatever above all of it. So they get copies of it, and the other countries, the people with the countries in the observer force, and the Israelis and the PA. It's just not open to civilians. I used to, years and years ago, I used to make huge efforts to try to get a hold of copies of some of them, with limited success. They were very interesting. I discovered all sorts of interesting things in them. But I eventually gave up and just stopped. So that's TIF, TIPH. Yeah, yes, don't be bashful. I don't bite. Yeah.
How do you see your community in 25 or 30 years?
Oh. Somebody asked me that last week. That's actually one of the most difficult questions for me to try to answer. And that is because I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 minutes from now. Literally, okay. I understand the continuation of the question, but the reason I answer that question that way is because I learned a long time ago that it's very dangerous to try to make predictions in this part of the world. because there are events that can happen on the other side of the world that can have a direct impact on us, even though we don't have anything to do with it. One of the examples I can give, if you remember, long time ago, I don't know how long, many years ago it was, there was an incident in Denmark where you had somebody that made cartoons of Muhammad and a pig or something, and we didn't have anything to do with it, but it wreaked havoc in Hebron, and the Arabs here went bananas. As a matter of fact, because there were people from Denmark and the TIF, they surrounded the TIF headquarters, which is on the other side of the city, and they fled the city. You know, but there was all sorts of things that happened around here. We didn't have anything to do with it, but you know, and so that today, I literally have no idea what's going to happen. I could tell you what I might like to see happen. Okay, what would we like to see? Okay, so first, on a very general, very wide platform, we want to be able to live here normally. Okay, you know, people come into Hebron and they take pictures of me with a gun in my belt. I would be very happy to get rid of it. I'd be very happy not to walk around Hebron with a gun. I'd be very happy to be able to have some kind of normalization relationships with some of my neighbors. When I moved into this apartment 18 years ago, there was a guy downstairs across the street who had 2 hands of gold. I have 2 left hands. I brought him up here, and I paid him a lot of money, and he did very good work. There was a tailor across the street my wife used to take my pants to get them, you know, sewed up or whatever. The guy once almost hugged her and kissed her because she found that when she bought some clothing back upstairs, she found a pair of pants, slacks that weren't mine, and she brought them back to him, I don't know, the next time he was there. And he literally almost gave her a bear hug because he said that the Arab who they belonged to had come back and he didn't have them, and the Arab accused him of stealing them and wanted to kill him. And he said, now I can give them back to him. You see, they're, you know, relationships that we have today. I don't know that we can necessarily get back to those kinds of some kind of positive relationships. Certainly not overnight. The difficulties that we have to deal with today in trying to renew some kind of positive relationships, it can take a long time, okay? For all sorts of reasons. But our goal would, in terms of any time, living normally means that if I have a piece of property, not me personally, the community has property that it owns, and that in court it can't be contested. It's proven to be Jewish property. But I could build on it without the United States State Department having babies, which is what they do today. I mean, in Jerusalem, in Gilo, or in Ramot, or in other places that Israel says that they're going to build, the State Department and the White House, they go out of their minds. It's not normal, okay? I'd like that the city should be an open city. The same way that the Arabs can come over here, we should be able to go over there. And we used to be able to. There was free access for everybody all over the city. Down in the Kasbah, where you were earlier, we used to go down there. People used to buy from the Arabs down there. There's a lot of stuff. We wouldn't buy meat from them, but clothing, school supplies, all sorts of things. Today we don't have any access. Even though it's under Israeli security control, we're not allowed to go down there. They give us an hour once a week on Shabbat. It's not normal. It's not normal to have to live the way we live here. And I think that's if I want to, you know, give a basic goal, that would be it. It also means, you know, that people don't have to worry about, you don't need checkpoints, because you don't have to worry about somebody coming over with a knife or a gun or anything else trying to kill you.
What are we hearing? What is the sound that we're hearing? down, there have been several loud, I don't know if tear gun canisters
I just hear the
or gunshots.
Yeah, first of all, I missed it. I don't even hear it.
Okay.
But most of the time, and again, I have to listen very carefully, especially if the sound, if it's fairly far away. Most of what you hear in Hebron, I would say most of the time, and I'm talking about 80–90% are fireworks, firecrackers. And you have to have a really good ear to distinguish.
I lived in the Tenderloin.
What?
I said I lived in the Tenderloin in San Francisco,
okay.
so I got a
No,
decent ear for it. So I'm just curious if tear gas
there's,
canisters make a
well,
similar sound, or...
First of all, I missed it. I
No,
didn't hear it.
Well,
Usually, you have several sounds. You have a lot of firecrackers. You have shooting. A lot of the shooting in Hebron, and not this time of the day, but going into nighttime is them. They shoot all their weddings and their parties and everything. Automatic gunfire, shooting all the time, which disturbs us a lot. And if you want to spend a few nights here, you know, you can. Usually when there's any kind of rioting in the city, we're talking about the other side of the city, when it starts to get closer to the areas where we are, so the army usually uses. A lot of times they use stun grenades. Those are my grandchildren. That's the noise you hear. They use stun grenades, which usually they make a lot of noise. After a while, you can sort of pick them out. You also can have tear gas canisters. Usually, if there's tear gas, then usually you don't necessarily know it by the sound. You just smell it. This wind brings it back over here. On Saturday, we had tear gas here for the first time in a long, long time. They also use sometimes, they shoot rubber bullets. Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between the stun grenades and the rubber bullets. I don't know. They all make noise, but you also have here, depending what time it is, the muazzin does this thing here about 5 times a day at least, and they make a lot of noise. They started about, these days, I don't know, 5:30 in the morning with the Allahu Akbar over the loudspeakers, and that goes until, I don't know, about 11 o'clock at night, and they make a lot of noise. Over the years, the volume has gone up, and one of my kids, my son, asked once an Arab that he worked with or that he knew, he said, "Doesn't it bother you too? I mean, you know, if you live next to a mosque or in between 2 mosques and you know, you just got the baby to go to sleep and all of a sudden it starts, you know." And so he said, "Doesn't it bother you too?" And he said, "What, you think we could say something? Anybody that says something, you never say it again." And I've been told by Arabs or by people that work within that there are specific reasons why they turn the volume up. They want to make sure that everybody knows they're there, not necessarily us, their own. When you talk about Hebron, you talk about a city that's Hebron is considered to be a very conservatively religious Muslim city. Hamas, the jihad, and you don't have any pubs in Hebron. Women aren't allowed to smoke outside. During Ramadan, they have people wandering around to make sure nobody's eating outside. It's not as bad as it is in Syria, where they cut off a 12-year-old's head because he's eating during Ramadan. But it's considered to be a very conservative religious city, and as such, people want everybody else around to know that they're there and they should know who's in charge.
Building on that you'd like to be able to live here as a normal community and interact with the Arabs, and I know you can't speak for your community, but what do you feel when you encounter an Arab who you don't know? I mean, is it a mixture of resentment or fear, or like what would you say is the first gut reaction that comes up?
I don't know if there is such thing. It depends. It really depends on the situation. There are times when you encounter a provocation, which you know is a provocation designed to make a certain point in front of certain people who happen to be present. I know that there are times today it happens a whole lot less than 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, okay? Because today there's a tremendous, there's a very, there's not a total separation between Jews and Arabs, but you don't have encounters like that all the time. When you walk from the Tomb of the Patriarchs back here, they walk the same street that we do, at least part of the way. You see people. And I suppose that today, depending on who you see, with what's going on, you know, you can't be walking in the clouds. You have to be aware of what's going on around you, okay? Because as things are going today, you don't know when somebody's going to pull out a knife. You have to sort of, you know, be aware of what's going on around you. But there are people that I've met up in the other side of the excavations, on the other side of the Tel, where I've been up there with people that have taken up in Tel Lamed and Tel Hebron, where the excavations were. We went to where the excavations are. On the other side of the excavations, there are other excavations, and I've been up there with people, and we've bumped into here.
Do you smell it?
Yeah. That's now you got something to write home about. It used to be. There were periods of time when you couldn't go outside, literally, and sometimes it went on like that for days. The kids couldn't go outside. But in any case, where I've met people up there, I've met groups of Arabs up there with people that I've been with, and we've had very interesting discussions with them. I don't have any problems. You know, depends on time, but standing and talking to people for a half hour, you know, it's an interesting phenomenon. There's a guy that I met. I was once on a tour with a guy from AIPAC, which right-wing Jews think that AIPAC is left-wing, and left-wing Jews think that AIPAC is right-wing. So I was up there with somebody who also I don't know who he was, but I met an Arab up there who was picking olives, and I'd known him for years. And the guy that I was with almost had a heart attack because we went up to each other and shook hands and gave each other a hug and started talking. And this guy saw a Jew from Hebron and an Arab from Hebron, you know, being civil to one another. He almost passed out. But that, you know, that can happen also. There are people that I know in Hebron that I really don't like because I know what they do. As much as I don't like him, he doesn't like me either. We get along really well together. But it's, you know, it depends. It's not, I don't think there's any one, you know, emotion. They're different people, different places, different times. Yeah.
Because you said that you want to live together, not have to go through all this. I wondered what organizations that you might be a member of where the two groups are working together to create that.
There aren't a whole lot. There are a few groups like that. There is a group of us that do have meetings occasionally with a few Arab leaders in Hebron, religious leaders. The one person that we've been, over the years had numerous meetings with is a guy, a man named Jabari. He's a sheikh in Hebron. His family's been around here for a while. His name is Sheikh Farid Jabari. I have some videos of some of our meetings with him up on YouTube. We've taken groups to speak with him and to listen to him, to ask him questions, They're interesting meetings. He's a very, very interesting man, and I've actually utilized some of the things that he's told us with different groups that I meet to explain certain phenomena that take place here. There's also a small group of Arabs today that do meet with a group of Jews from the Hebron region, in Gush Etzion, that have occasional meetings, discussions about this, that, and the other thing, about some of their visions and what they would want. They have a problem today, the Arabs. They have a big problem, because a lot of them really aren't interested in the kinds of things that have been going on, and I can take that from the Second Intifada on. Okay, today especially, we use Hebron as an example. Most of the people in Hebron aren't interested in any kind of continued, let's say, a new kind of major intifada, because it destroys their lives. Today they do very well economically, and they know that that destroys their whole economic base. Everything shuts down, and it hurts them, and they're not interested in it. There are many of them that do not like in any way, shape, or form Hamas or Fatah. They look at the PA as being a hugely corrupt organization that takes care of itself but not anybody else, and they don't like them. The problem is they can't say anything. Okay, if you talk, you can talk to them. You can also talk to Arabs that live in Israel. You talk to them one-on-one without the cameras, okay, and ask them, you know, if they're interested in living in a Palestinian state. And a whole lot of them are going to say no. Okay, when they talk about, when they've talked in the past about land transfers, about how Israel, with the creation of a Palestinian state, so there would be the blocks would stay under Israeli control, and Israel would transfer some of the blocks of heavily populated Arab cities within Israel proper today to the PA. So you go up and ask them. There are areas in the Sharon, they call it in Israel a triangle. All Arab cities. You go up and ask them if they want to be moved into Palestinian state, and they'll say no. A friend of mine once was on a group. They went to speak to a pastor in the old city. I don't remember which church it was, but he calls himself a Palestinian. So after he spoke to the group, they all asked him questions, and my friend said to him, "Okay, so tomorrow there's a Palestinian state. You're going to live in it?" He said, "Hell no." Because they understand, as much as they don't like me or the state of Israel, they're going to do a whole lot better here than they're going to do the Palestinian state. The education, the health, everything. They might not like us, but they know that it's going to be a whole lot better from here than it is going to be from there. But today it's very difficult for people to say that openly. The only people that can are people like Jabari, who does say he doesn't want a Palestinian state because he has a tremendous amount of power and he has a whole lot of people behind him, and nobody's going to get close to him.
Can you explain how that would be better, staying with the Israeli instead of the Palestinian state? And you spoke of normalcy for the Jews. What about the situation considering your Arab or Palestinian neighbors?
First of all, I don't say it's better. They say it's better for them. Okay, because the living conditions that they have, look, the PA today, PA today has very little control over anything that goes on. And the Arab population is tremendously divided. And understand that, you know, Israel is also has tremendous political divisions. It has political divisions. It has religious divisions. The difference between what happens here and what happens there is, for example, and you can see it. You can go into YouTube and you can just watch it. Okay, when Hamas took over Gaza, after Gaza was given to the PA by Israel, and then they had elections, and Hamas won. Okay, they took the people, all of the PA people, they took them up to the roofs of the buildings and threw them off, just one after another. You can see it, filmed, there are videos of it, one after another, one down, another one, another one. They still do it today. It's no different than what they do in Iran to homosexuals. They hang them. They, you know, we don't do that. We fight a lot. We argue with each other in Israel. We yell at each other. But we don't take our people we disagree with up to the roofs of the apartment building and throw them off the roof. You know? And people are scared of that. They really are. There are those today that are perpetrating these attacks, not so much because they want to kill a Jew, but because they want to be a shaheed. Because you know what they're offered. All of those virgins up in the sky. They got the text wrong. It's really not written, but they don't find that out until they get up there. And then they're in for a big shock. But they're afraid of it because they don't want that. And it's very difficult. There's religious coercion, there's political coercion, and it's extremely violent. If you open your mouth and it's not what I want to hear, then you lose your tongue. And that's what happens. So that's where they don't want it. They know that Israelis don't do that. Okay? And look, Israel today treats Arabs, they treat the families of some of the top Arab terrorists in Israeli hospitals today. And nobody ever hears about it because nobody wants to, you know, rock the boat. But we treat in Israeli hospitals, a family of kids, we treated Abu Mazen's wife in an Israeli hospital. And there were reports of people from Gaza. You know, and they know that. They know that the Israeli medical treatment is better than they'll ever have. So why shouldn't they want it? Nothing for them to lose. Now in terms of the other party question, look, first of all, basically, you say to me, your question in other words is like, what's the solution? In Israel today, you've got 8 million plus people, of whom about 2 million are Arabs, in Israel proper. You've got 13 Arabs today in the Knesset. Okay? You've got Arabs in the Knesset who work against the state of Israel, openly. You know, it would be like having somebody in Congress who was working for Al-Qaeda, openly. Or somebody who was saying that, you know, they support the guys who've been setting off the bombs now in New York and New Jersey. And that's what you have in the Israeli parliament. But they're there. The basic question is, what happens to all of the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, where we live? And very honestly, it's very much dependent on them. If, for example, Israel were to, well, this is nothing. We should wait until there are a few others that are closer to us, and then, you know, people come here and they ask me, and I say, I don't even hear it. And I once took a group of journalists to the Tomb of the Patriarchs, and I was talking to them about what happens when they start and you can't hear yourself think. And I took them upstairs and sat them down to talk to them, and as I opened my mouth to talk, Allahu Akbar came out. And for 10 minutes they sat there and waited for them to finish, because they certainly couldn't hear me talk. In any case, if Israel to annex Judea and Samaria, so all of Judea and Samaria, what you call the West Bank, is now officially part of Israel. Okay? So then a tremendous amount of what happens with them depends on them. If they decide that they want to continue to use violent means to try to kill people, it's very difficult to interact with them in any kind of a normal way. If they decide that they're willing to live within the framework of the State of Israel, the same way as 2-point-something million Arabs today live in Israel, then I don't place out of the framework of possibility you give them Israeli citizenship, the same way as the Arabs in Israel have citizenship. But the incitement has to end. They have to stop teaching their kids that a hero is somebody that takes suicide belt and blows himself up. They have to stop glorifying suicide bombers and terrorists that have killed tens of Jews, which they do. Go into Ramallah today, and the square is named after a woman who blew herself up and killed Jews in Jerusalem. And you go from one place to the next, and they glorify them. This is their ideal. Okay? And you see it all the time. If you want, there are sites, there are websites that the only thing they do is take Palestinian media and they translate it. And you can see it. There are the two primary sites that I know of. One of them is called Palestinian Media Watch, PMW. And they take all of the films and the newspaper reports and the interviews, and they translate them. You can see exactly what they're saying. Not what they say to you when you sit down with them and have a pita and some hummus, some falafel, but what the media shows. Okay, what the kids do, what they teach the kids. So one is Palestinian Media Watch, pmw.org or whatever it is. Itamar Marcos, you can take a look at that. The other one is called Memory, MEMRI. And they take all of their media and everything else, and they translate it. You can see exactly what they're saying. They have to stop doing it. It's very difficult for a state to take terrorist organizations and just whitewash them. That's what I was talking about downstairs in the museum, in the memorial room. Because every time Israel has tried to do that, the only thing we get back are dead people. So why do it? You know, what's in it for us? Is that, wait a minute, who asked me that question?
Sorry,
Does that answer your question? Again, normalization is a it's a reaction to the way people act. If today you have checkpoints in Israel, because if you don't, you have more dead people. It's very simple. When you have a checkpoint, it's much more difficult for somebody to get in a knife or a gun or any other kind of weapon to use to kill people. Okay? If that threat did not exist, then you wouldn't need the checkpoints. It's very simple. As long as that threat exists, then it's a necessity. It's as we say, it's aleph bet. You don't, you can't just, and it's, unfortunately, it's proven. It's not some kind of a theory, because we have seen what has happened when, as a matter of concession, Israel has eased these checkpoints, and people get killed. It's very simple. So, if that stops, and Israel can pull back, as long as that continues, and today we're seeing it continue more and more and more, then you can't. You just can't. Yeah, somebody over here. Yes.
She just had a question.
Yeah, sure.
And in your home, thank you so much.
My wife would be here too, but she went up to, she finished work. She's a speech therapist, and she's in Kiryat Arba. When she finished work today, I have a daughter who lives up in Samaria in a community called Tapuach. She has 2 sets of twins 18 months apart. And she just went into her 9th. And we're hoping this time it's just one. So she went up there for a couple of days. Yeah.
We visited the Holocaust Museum, and I was incredibly moved, and I'm so very sorry for all the things that have happened to the Jewish people. This is really the first time that I've really spoken to anyone of your faith, but I know that your faith, the Muslims, the Christians, all come from the same Abraham, the same one God. And when I see the wall, and I hear the Palestinian folks talk, and I see their children, their women, and I see so many soldiers out there, I get really sad and I get upset thinking, isn't this the same thing that was going on to the Jewish people when there was so many military people, so many ghettos, so much limitation? And I know they're terrorists, I know, there's a big concern for that, but I also feel like the more we try to, become this powerful arm of a people that we're afraid of, then they react and they become angry. I saw a little boy today that was really angry at the soldiers, and he threw a cup at him. The soldiers charged him, and we were told that children can be arrested when they're 5 years old and taken to jail. I mean, I don't know if that's an exaggeration, but it just worries me, and I see so many soldiers. I feel like we're in a war, the enemies. And didn't Abraham want us to believe that there's one God that is good and loves all people?
Okay. You ask a very important question, which, I don't know. It is 4:10. You've got to tell me when to stop.
Well, this
because
is definitely
no, I'll answer the question,
yes.
But I'll sit here for another hour. But I plan your schedule. We want to just do two. We want to do 2 other things. So we just have to. I've got time. I don't care. But just the time is based on your schedule. Look. Let's start with the easy part, the wall. We're against it too. We didn't want it. We still don't want it. It was built for a few reasons. One of them is certainly security. But if you wander around enough, different places at different times during the day, you'll see that it's fairly ineffective because people just climb over it, and I've seen it. They climb over this way and then they climb back the other way. But one of the other reasons that it was built wasn't just for security. It may sound strange, but one of the primary economic means that they had was through car theft, and there were humongous amounts of Israeli cars being stolen and moved into the PA, where then they could either take them apart for parts or they'd sell them amongst themselves. And you'd see people wandering around in cars that I couldn't even think about affording. Since the wall was put up and they have the checkpoints, the car theft has dropped tremendously because they just don't have any. People can climb over the walls, but they haven't figured out how to get cars over the walls yet. Look, you ask about any possible comparison about what happened here and what happened in Nazi Germany. I think the most, what word would I use? Probably the most important, or the most, the major proof that it's not, is the fact that you've got 2 million Arabs living in Israel who go to university, who have health care, who have everything else, and with everything else they have 13 people sitting in the Knesset. If Israel was like Nazi Germany, then the 2+ point something million Arabs in Israel wouldn't have any of that. Okay? The Jews in Nazi Germany wore little yellow patches. The Arabs don't. The Arabs that live in Israel wear the same clothing that we wear. They have the same license plates that we have. And they have the same ID cards that we have. Okay? We all have the same thing. You're talking about today what's happening in Judea and Samaria. And the reason that you have, in terms of security, what you have. And you know, I also, when you see security forces, when I first came to Israel in 1974, I was 20 years old. I grew up in New Jersey, and I was in school in Cleveland, and the only place, I mean, where in the States, you know, outside of Texas and Colorado, you know, where do you see guns? You see guns on television, cowboys and Indians, and police. And the truth is, I do know people in the States that have arsenals, personal arsenals, that have more weapons than we have altogether in Hebron. But because the gun laws today in the States allow you to do that, you can buy whatever you want, wherever you want. But I came in 1974, less than a year after the 73 Yom Kippur War, and I saw guys younger than me walking around with submachine guns called Uzis. And I was greatly taken aback. It's a submachine gun. I was 20, there were 18-year-olds walking around with submachine guns. Really strange. It probably took about 6 months to get used to it and to start to understand, to comprehend why. Okay? Because it's very, very different from anything I'd ever seen. And that's one of the primary reasons why when you come over here and you wander around Israel, whether it be here or in Jerusalem, or you go up north in the area of the Galil, or you go up towards Lebanon, and you go towards the northeastern border today with Syria. My son is serving up in the Golan Heights now. And you go and you see, up north, you see huge amounts of soldiers. And it very much takes you back, because you're not used to it. Because in the United, I don't say that it's going to stay, because I think in the United States today, if things can keep going the way that they are, you're going to get used to seeing a lot of security forces wandering around all the cities all the time. Because if the terrorist organizations, as I saw now, okay, they're looking for Ahmad Rahmin, okay, and his terrorist organization is setting up bombs on the East Coast, then you're going to see huge security forces, as you saw after 9/11. Okay? But you're not used to it, so it really takes you back. And I understand it, because when you're not used to seeing it, you do see it, then it's really strange. Okay? I understand it 100%. In Israel, it's a necessity. It's a fact of life. Because without that, the state cannot exist. When you deal today with security forces, especially now, where you have these continued attacks, and again, you can see them all. They're all filmed. Today you have cameras everywhere. Almost anything that happens in Hebron, there's a video of it. Okay? Because they want to know what's happening. Okay? And you take a look at the video of the guy who what's his name, who on Shabbat gave the guy the papers, and the soldier took them, and as soon as he looked at the papers, took out the knife and went after him. Okay? But again, look, I think I left it here on purpose. I usually don't. Some, you know, freak. This is a guy who's sitting on Temple Mount. Everybody hears him. And this is what he's saying. I put out an article in I think it was in 1998, called Uncle Muhammad. And I just brought down quotes from these guys about, you know, let's paint the White House black, and the Americans and the Jews are sons of monkeys and pigs. Okay? And I warned then, and I'm not a prophet, and some of you have IQs that are a whole lot higher than mine, but you just have to look and see what's going on. and warned then about what America should be prepared for. And that was 3 years before 9/11. Today in Israel, we cannot afford to let that happen. We cannot afford to let people go out and use terrorism to pulverize us. And we have to use whatever means are necessary to prevent that. Has nothing to do, you're right, Abraham did say what he said, and you're right, Abraham wanted peace. So take a look at what Muhammad said. I've been in the past year doing a lot of reading to try to educate myself more about Islam, the different strains of Islam, Sunni, Shiite, and to understand more about the Quran. And what this guy said is very straightforward. Okay? He's basically saying, as did an imam in the United States a few years ago, that by 2050 North America is going to be a caliphate and Washington, D.C. is going to be its capital. We can't allow that to happen here. And I cannot address actions of soldiers who attack a 5-year-old. I think it's wrong, okay? But we cannot allow ourselves a situation whereby people who make such pronouncements and are willing to do it, we can't allow it to happen. And that's why you've got security forces. If Israel's concessions that were made from Oslo up through giving them Gaza and Gush Katif and all of that, if since then there had been total peace and no Israelis had been killed, then we could say, I'd say I don't like it, but it works. But it doesn't. Anytime we give a concession or we pull back, then they see that as a weakness. They see that as the hand of Allah saying, you see, just have to push a little bit and they give up. So if we push a little bit more, they'll give up a little bit more until there's nothing left. And we can't do that. We cannot do that. And you've got to use whatever is necessary to make sure it doesn't happen, because we've gone through it.
Do you think love would help a little bit? To try
You've
to
got,
love
look,
the
listen,
neighbor?
listen. All of what you say is in theory it's all wonderful, but it's got to be a two-way street. It can't be a one-way street. And even when it is, even when Israel does do things, it's never recognized. And look, you know, different peoples and different cultures have different ways of thinking. And there's no better or worse, or good or bad. There's different cultures, their heads work in different ways. The Japanese think different from the Germans, and the Germans think different from the English, and the English think different from the French, and the French think different from the Americans. They will have their cultures, the way they look at things, the perspectives they put things in. And the same thing is true with the Arabs. They have a different way of thinking in the way that I think, the way you think. And again, I'm not putting a positive or negative point on it. I'm just saying it's different. It's a different culture. If you want to try to understand, if you want to try to use as an example the idea of love, before you do that, study in depth their culture. In depth. Really in depth. And once you understand their culture and the way their heads work and what they think and how it plays out with their religion, how it plays out with their everyday life, with their politics, okay, then you can ask yourself, is that going to work? Or is it going to hurt? Because what you see as a means of bringing closer they may see in a whole different way. They may see that as a way in which they look at you as being very weak, and they can then utilize that to get more and more of what they want. And this guy sitting up on Temple Mount he's not a guy that's sitting in Oshkosh. And you won't see anybody, you won't see any Arab leader saying that he's wrong. You won't. Go look for it. Go look for those things and find an Arab leader, a Muslim leader, who says who will decry that and say that's not true. You won't find one. Not one. Because that's what they think. And if that's what they think, then if you go to him with open arms and saying, I love you, he'll say, I love you too, and he'll cut off your head. And if you don't believe it, take a look at what's going on in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, where they chop off the heads of 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, or a kid who's listening to music they don't like. Talk about brotherly love. Unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, it is unfortunate, and not all Arabs think the way he does. But there are a lot that do, and certainly the leadership, and nobody is going to come out and say, you're wrong, we apologize. Not one. Okay, look, what we...
Did you hear that, by the way?
Yeah.
Those two? Okay. So
It's on the other side of the city. You don't have to, I don't think about it.
So
Look, listen, just,
two?
yeah, okay, just two things before we finish. See, you may think that people like here are like, how do you not hear it? So I said they shot at us for 2 years, over 2 years they shot at us. They shot into this house, excuse me, numerous times. There are holes over there, up here with holes in it. This has a hole in it. Bullet came through a window. Okay, so so little noises over there it doesn't disturb me a whole lot. What I would like to suggest, though, very seriously, several different things that you can read. Because my impression is, from your questions and the seriousness that you seem to really be involved with this stuff, and several different things you can read. Okay, one of them is, you would ask me about normalcy and like that. This is a book which deals with that. It came out a couple of years ago. It's called The Israeli Solution. It's written by a woman named Carolyn Glick. She's a brilliant woman, and she put this out. I wouldn't say that I agree with 100% of what she says, but 90+%. And it does offer a different path for solution, as opposed to what is today called two-state solution. There's also a man whose article you can read named Mordechai Kedar, K-E-D-A-R, who also has some ideas. He's also a brilliant man, and that's number one. Number two, I don't have a hard copy of it. I picked it up on Amazon digitally. But it's a fascinating book, and by my way of thinking, for people like yourselves, it's really a must-read. A man named Tuvia Tenenbaum, T-E-N-E-N-B-O-M, Tuvia, T-U-V-I-A, wrote a book called Catch the Jew. After he wrote it and it came out, a lot of people started to say that he forged it and that it wasn't true and everything. Well, everything that he wrote he has either on film or on tape, because all of the interviews he did he recorded. And again, it's very interesting to read what people have to say when they think they know who you are, but they don't really know. It's a fascinating book, and I would say I really think it's must reading for people who are more religious on any. He's very cynical about religion, all religions. So just ignore his cynicism. The third thing you can read is something that I put out. I don't have a hard copy of it. You can pick it up in PDF. I have a little website up called, my name is David Wilder, so it's davidwilder.org. There's a booklet called Breaking the Lies, which deals with questions and answers, numerous subjects, some of which we've spoken about today, some of which we haven't. You can pick it up. It's free PDF off of that, and you go through it. People have any questions, you can always reach me at hebron@gmail.com, hebron@gmail, and anything you have questions about or whatever. So with that, okay, you're sleeping here tonight. Your room is okay. You want to go